our chairman of the session, Professor Siddhartha Das. He is of Department of Metallurgical and Materials Engineering and IIT Kharagpur. He is PhD in Metallurgical Engineering from University of Illinois. He is a MS from Metallurgical Engineering, University of Illinois. He is a Metallurgical Engineer from B College, Shibpur. And he has huge experience and so many papers in his name and patents. So with this very brief, I think we can share it online with this brief. That may I request Professor Das to conduct the one. There are 3 papers. You can do it, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are running about 40 minutes less, so I request the next speakers, Mr. Tushar Chakraborty, Dr. Sabarna Roy, and Ms. Bipasa Ghosh to come to the stage. And you are given 20 minutes time. May I request you, if you can possibly conclude your thoughts in 15 minutes, and at the end of the 12 minutes, I will give you a signal that 12 minutes is over. So the first speaker for today is Mr. Tushar Chakraborty. He is a director with Deloitte India, having more than 19 years of experience in metal sector, strategy, operation, business consulting, etc., etc. He led 60 plus engagement for government and leading private companies. His experience in various fields from market study, due diligence studies, techno-commercial assessment, bid process, management, project planning, etc. He has served various global clients in Australia, various African countries, East and Southeast Asian countries. He has been associated with various national and international bodies and conferences. In recent years, he has been instrumental in driving multiple strategic discussions, minings, ministries, and policymakers in the field of strategic minerals, etc. So I request you, Mr. Chakraborty, to come.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tushar Chakraborty. I'm a director in Deloitte, and thanks for the initial introduction, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure to share some of the perspectives as a consultant. And we have been hearing a lot of content since the morning, especially in and around how the industry is going to behave, what are the upsides, what are the kind of perspective which is coming in the technicalities. What I'm going to do in next 15 minutes is I'm going to share some of the facts and figures which is happening in and around us, and some of the analysis more from a market point of view, which will typically drive this entire discussion forward, or rather set the context for all of us. The agenda which I'll be covering in the next 15 minutes is more of a macro landscape of India in Amrit Kal. We have been hearing it a lot of times that we are talking about 2047. What exactly is that? Then how this steel sector is going to play a role, steel, iron ore and ferroalloy sectors play a role there. And the last thing would be that what are the enabling frameworks in and around that. So let me first try to draw or paint a picture of India 2047 for all of you. Well, we're talking about Viksit Bharat by 2047. And what does that mean? We'll be the 3rd largest economy in the world. We will have a $30 trillion overall GDP. The export values will go up to around 8.6, 8.7 trillion. Our population, which is already highest in the world, will be around 1.7 billion by that time. The per capita electricity consumption will go up by 8%, 8 times. New energy vehicle, we have been hearing about it since morning, will also go up by 100%. And while we are talking about the battery energy storage system, this will hold the overall portfolio of around 1840 gigawatt hour, and the kind of sectors which are going to contribute to this is already highlighted in this particular slide, which says that some of the pillar around India going forward is going to be energy, rural and agriculture, electronics and customer goods, infra, transportation, aerospace, defense, chemical and pharmaceutical. Well, this is a broad picture, but one thing for all of us which is interesting here is that most of the sectors which we are talking about is going to cut across. And that's the reason why it's going to be very important to talk about steel, iron ore, ferroalloys in our segment. Now I don't know whether this slide is pretty visible to all of you, but this is more of a trend analysis, which I'm just trying to draw around some of the key indicators for this sector. Well, and it's like the analysis of last 10 years, which is highlighting that how the population has grown, how the urbanization has grown, how manufacturing PMI's percentage has again grown or kind of got impacted during COVID and some of the other global scenarios, dynamics. And accordingly, we have also seen what coal production has been in last 10 years, electricity generation, finished steel and crude steel. Well, there are few very important elements which I have highlighted here. The first thing is the population growth in last decade has been around 1% CAGR, and this trend is going to be there for the next decade as well. There are speculations that after 2035, it will be more like a tepid one, but till that time, it's going to go up. The second thing, which is, I would say, a very, very important aspect is high rate of urbanization. And why it is important? Because this drives the per capita consumption of commodities like steel, some of the other commodities as well. So, and I'll give you a live example. Typically, when we talk about urbanization, the rate at which you are basically consuming steel, look at anywhere in the world, is almost multiples of what is happening in the rural area. And if you look at try to correlate with the urbanization percentage, we are already at around 36.36 or 37 kind of percentage by FY24, and this percentage are going to go up. There is a significant push on urbanization. But is that all? No. The reason is, even the per capita consumption of rural India is also increasing. If I typically put that in numbers, from 19 kgs, it has gone up to 38 kgs in a very short span because of the kind of quality of life which is also improving there. Of course, when we talk about GDP, apart from the COVID era, you can see that the overall CAGR in the last decade has been around 6%. And when we are increasing, we are looking at the disposable income, well, this is one interesting area. This has gone up by 10% CAGR, which is humongous. Well, definitely there is a tremendous push on the renewable energy projects, but the overall aspect, the way we are basically trying to draw is the quality of life is changing. And it is not something which is future, it is something which we all have already witnessed. As a country, we are a young country. You know what is the maiden age of India? It is less than the maiden age of this hall. It's 29 years. And we will continue to have the same trend till 2047, which means that we will be a young nation by that time, which means that the demography and the choices, the kind of overall quality of life is also going to impact a lot of commodities, lot of instances which are happening around us. Well, that was more of a picture or a trend from the last 10 years. Let me try to draw a very small correlation between what has happened this year. And these are again provisional numbers, don't go by the exact numbers, there can be some changes here, but the overall sentiments which I'm trying to relate here is, if you typically look at the crude steel production this year, which is almost 52 million tons, the kind of capacity which has gone has crossed already 200 million tons. This is definitely a point to ponder upon. The second thing is also when I talk about iron ore production in the country, I see that this number has also gone around 295, 93, I think that's the number for this year, which is again a 6% rise. And thanks to the previous panelists, and we heard that there are a lot of commitments in the market. NMDC is already one such organization who are absolutely on top of it. So similarly, there are a lot of promises which are there in the market, which shows that these numbers are also going to go up. The progress will be there. In terms of coal, when I look at this number, for the first time in India, we have crossed 1 billion tons as our domestic production. Well, this is a 5% increase from last year, but this trend is again likely to continue, at least for the next decade. Now, when we talk about the other aspects like domestic scrap generation, well, this has also increased. And why it's important, I'll come in my subsequent slides that why it is important. When you look at, obviously, when the domestic generation goes up, the scrap imports do get some hit, and there are a lot of policy regulations which has happened recently, which also impact this. So this has gone down by 16%. So with all this, how do we paint the picture for 2047? Well, this is how your 2040 or the Amrit Kal will look like. We will have a country which will have around 500 million tons of crude steel capacity, with a 220 kgs per capita consumption. The net zero steel production is something which the world is talking about, India is talking about, focus will be around that. India will be the manufacturing hub for the world, or to say China plus one is already something which is in discussion now. There are a lot of countries who are evaluating setting up the manufacturing hub in India, and you can witness similar kind of examples globally. So those things are going to continue. This trend is going to continue for next decade at least. And what are going to be the imperatives around it? Well, asset and process optimization, scrap recycling, renewable energy, hydrogen and alternate feedstocks, novel steel making processes, technicalities. I think we have a lot of discussions around it, and CCUS. Well, these are some of the points which India is talking about, the strategists are talking about today. They are looking at it closely. What is going to drive this demand? Well, I have just taken few examples here, but these numbers are going to go up. There are multiple other initiatives which are there already. But Bharatmala, Sagarmala, Freight Corridor, Jal Jeevan, Udaan, or Udan, all these are some of these initiatives which has already been announced, which have tremendous impact when it comes to the commodity consumption, and one such commodity is steel. But this was all good things in and around steel. Let me also flag some of I would say alarming stuffs, or some of the stuffs which should be looked at slightly differently. The first is, while we talk about the overall dynamics which play in India, the first is how we look at Indian iron making. We have blast furnace contributes 68%, but I'll say blast furnace plus coal-based DRI contributes almost 90% of India's overall mix. Well, if I convert that in terms of the specific energy consumption, well, that may have some advantage. But while I talk about emission intensity and look at India from a global perspective and try to do a small benchmark around it, I find these numbers are slightly alarming for all of us. Well, the right side graph, you can see that India is almost on the top of the radar when you talk about indexed in terms of intensity. Compared to a country which is almost producing, in multiples of India like China, which is almost at the global average. And when you talk about US, it is way below that. So what does that mean? That means that the concepts like CBAM, the concept like carbon credit, the concepts like decarbonizations needs a meticulous look through platforms like this. I think if we need to talk about future, and if we are talking about sustainability, let's talk about the KPIs there. What are the KPIs which you as an industrialist going to look at? I mean, these are the kind of KPIs which you'll have to look at. That was one such aspect. The other aspect which I was discussing earlier is, scrap recycling, and how does it play? Well, the top line statement that every ton of scrap used for steel production avoids emission by 1.5 ton of CO2, consumption of 1.4 ton of iron ore, 740 kgs of coal, 120 kgs of limestone. Well, it's fantastic to use scrap, isn't it? But it's not a secret anymore. This is something which globally everybody is trying to do. In fact, the China story for next decade or two is going to be around it. They are going to get into scrap-based DFs rather than getting into the BOF route, which has been the typical trend for them in the past. And with that, they are also going to tape it down, especially the energy-intensive kind of sectors, and look at more innovative challenges. So if I try to draw that picture for scrap utilization, I see that in our country, which is around 32, I was kind of showing that number, around 32 million tons. So the usage percentage would be around 20%. And if you can see at the bottom of the graphs, it shows that with a lot of initiatives, interventions which are going to come up, by 2047, we will be using almost 40% of the scrap usage. But there are some set of challenges around it as well. The first is, of course, that there is a decrease in the availability of scrap because globally everybody is aware about it. The second is, this is not a organized sector. There are a lot of challenges around it, though there are a lot of policy interventions which are coming, but still it is a sector where we cannot call it organized till date. The third is, when you talk about the volatility in the prices, this is also a big concern for India. When we have seen that when the prices go down, there are issues in terms of dumping, there are issues in terms of exports, but this trend is something which is sporadic. It's not something which you can continue and create a trend analysis around it. The last is lack of standardization, but yes, there are initiatives again taken around it. So overall, with all this, we can say that this usage is going to go up from 20% to say 14% in the next 2 decades. Let me also try to draw a picture around the iron ore segment, how it's going to look like. Well, though I have shown FY24 number, because FY25 numbers are still under audit, or I would say not disclosed in all forums, but yeah, this number, well, we are talking about 152, some iron ore of 293. But how do I look at this picture by FY35 or next decade? Well, this number would go up almost double for crude steel. For iron ore, it will be hovering around 400 to 440 million ton. Maybe 100 million ton of that or more than that will be contributed by organization like NMDC. But the trend which is going to be there is in terms of the share and how these shares are going to look like. Well, typically, if I look at my 24 numbers, which I have highlighted here, the BF-BOF route typical share is around 43%. The DRI route from coal is around, DRI-EAF route is around 18%. Gas base is just 4%. And this trend is likely to continue. So the expected scenario is that the share of BF-BOF is going to go up. DRI and induction furnace route is going to go down. The scrap usage is going to go up. And iron ore, the specific consumption of iron ore, depending on the quality of ore, is again going to go down. With that, the numbers may be hovering somewhere around the kind of shown here, especially when you talk about the specific consumption of iron ore, you see that these numbers are going to go down. It is already in a band, but this number are going to go down. So this is more of a speculation. Of course, there are multiple scenarios which will come. We have seen in the past that there is no single trend which is there. I'm not sure whether the screen is visible to all of you. Yeah. It's not something which is absolutely sacrosanct, but these are more around the trends and scenarios which work out for all of us. But yeah, this is point to look at. These are the areas or elements to really ponder upon in platforms like this. Coming to my another area, which is ferroalloy market and how it's going to look like, it's again going to go up by 6 to 7%. There are a lot of thrive which is there in this sector, and I think in the previous panel we just heard how Shushendu ji was mentioning about, the panel speakers were talking about the upside which can happen in this industry. But I just want to highlight some of these points, especially in terms of drivers for ferroalloy, the market. The first is, of course, the PLI scheme by government, which has already been announced for something like specialty steel. This is going to intensify this industry. There are a lot of push which we are going to see here. The next is national infrastructure pipeline. It has already had a capex of around 11.11 lakh crore, and this will typically flow into roads, defense, railways, and initiatives like that, which are going to drive this. We know that the stainless steel segment is promising and it will grow at a 9% CAGR. And the recent interventions related to 0% in terms of import duty on ferronickel and scraps is also one very important element to add as a driver here. But yes, one thing which I would also like to add is, which I have mentioned as a challenge, but yeah, that is critical mineral and the push towards that. We understand that there's a heavy dependency when we talk about nickel, molybdenum, vanadium, because they contribute to this segment. And we are kind of 100% to 90% dependent on that. This segment is again very critically looked at by the policymakers. They're trying to get into this picture that if we don't have, let's admit it, we don't have it in our country. And whatever we're talking about it typically a mine takes 16 to 17 years to develop. So if you're talking about something today, you're not talking about substituting that immediately. We'll have to phase it. And the immediate phasing is to go and acquire somewhere some assets or ensure that raw material security is there for the country. So those initiatives are already taken. I think there are agencies or bodies like Kabil today who are working on that. And I think this is something which is going to go up as we progress. So, yeah. So thanks for that. I just have a couple of minutes to sum up things. This is an interesting slide and something which I would like to highlight, that while we are looking at these improvements, we are looking at the scrap usage, there is a phasing to everything. And typically if we phase this entire thing in the next 2 decades, the first phase or the horizon one, which is talking about some of these initiatives like asset and process optimization, renewable power, scrap recycling, CCUS, novel steel making, they typically come as a horizon one, the immediate step which we need to look at. And there are a lot of discussions which are there in multiple platforms like this. And this will typically contribute around 50% of overall decarbonization initiatives, while we are talking about some of these initiatives which have already been taken up. Next would be Horizon 2, which talks about hydrogen and alternate feedstock. We understand hydrogen is not economical. When I say hydrogen, I mean green hydrogen. It's not economical today. So initiatives are already on. We don't know. Tomorrow maybe we'll find some alternates there. The important thing will be biomass as an alternate feedstock. I think we heard Dr. Bhattacharya earlier, and he was talking about alternate sources. Of course, this can be one such source. And the last would be, while we are taking into that horizon 3, it's more around sustaining what we have already done. Because India is bombarded with a lot of promises today. There are a lot of things which are happening, a lot of discussions like this which are happening, initiatives are taken. And ultimately there is a time when we will mature and we will sustain that. Probably this horizon 3 is talking about it. So with that, I come to my last slide, which talks about what are the takeaways for all of us. First thing is, infrastructure is going to drive the demand of steel in the country. These numbers are going up. Urbanization is definitely going to contribute there. BF/BOF is going to dominate, but yes, EAF share is going to go up, and scrap usage is going to double in next 2 decades. While we talk about iron ore, we need 400 to 440 million tons by FY35. There are a lot of capacity expansions which are already been planned. We need to go ahead and look at that they get proper support, because at the same time when we are talking about this entire iron ore ecosystem, there are 123 blocks which have already been auctioned. 108 out of them faces delays for some reason or the other. So this is something which is to be looked at. The overall grade in terms of security, while we are talking about, we see that the beneficiation and pelletization must be scaled to sustain steel growth. This is another area to focus on. And last is when we talk about ferroalloys. Well, there is a robust growth demand which is expected, and there is an export-oriented setup which already exists in the country, which plays on the trade dynamics, of course, but yeah, it exists, and this looks like to be a sustainable business going forward. We do have tremendous reliance on vanadium, molybdenum, niobium. So this particular critical minerals, we need to look at it differently. We need to strengthen our value chain. How do we do it is a point to look at. The last is capacity expansion, especially in the grill steel trend, is also going to impact ferroalloy industry or stainless steel industries. So the global competitiveness around it is also going to go up. With that, thank you. These are my coordinates. If you have any questions, we'll be discussing during the lunch time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. The next speaker is Dr. Shabarna Roy. He was the Senior Vice President of Electro Steel Castings. He was also the DI Business Head, Sales and Marketing at the Sundar Manganese and Iron Ores Limited at their corporate office. Presently, he is the Head of Head Research and Development at Kejriwal Castings Limited. He is a prolific writer, TEDx speaker, etc., etc. He has been awarded the Right Choice Awards for Author of Eminence in 2022. Dr. Roy.
Thank you for a wonderful introduction. I think you can see my slide. Welcome to the session on India's pivotal role in the evolving global ferroalloy landscape. I'm Dr. Shabarna Roy, and it is an honor to represent Kejriwal Castings Limited at this prestigious Steel Tech seminar. Today, we delve into how India, with its robust steel manufacturing base and growing ferroalloy capability, is well positioned to leverage global supply chain realignments and sustainability trends. This session will dissect international and domestic market dynamics, spotlight India's export strengths, and chart out a strategic vision for policy, infrastructure, and green innovations. Our collective goal: to transform India into a high margin, green certified export powerhouse. Let us now explore the structure and key themes we will unpack through this presentation. This slide outlines the roadmap for our session today. We will begin by understanding India's emerging role in the global ferroalloy sector, followed by a deep dive into international market forces and how India aligns with these trends. From there, we will turn inward to examine domestic capacities, structural changes, and current export performance. We will then evaluate strategic levers India can use to enhance its global footprint, including navigating green standards and policy frameworks. We will wrap up with a comprehensive conclusion that draws actionable insights for stakeholders across the ferroalloy value chain. Now, as we set the stage, it's essential to understand India's emergence as a core contributor to the global ferroalloy supply chain. India's growth as a steel producing nation has naturally catalyzed the development of its ferroalloy sector, with materials like silicomanganese and ferrochrome serving as the building blocks of high performance steel. These alloys are not just supportive but transformative. They enhance the strength, electrical conductivity, and corrosion resistance of steel, enabling advanced industrial applications. With global supply chains in flux due to environmental policies and trade realignments, India has the opportunity to become not just a base of manufacturing, but a preferred supplier of value-added, certified metallurgical inputs. The global ferroalloy market is projected to witness robust growth, expanding from US dollars 51.2 billion in 2023 to US dollars 68 billion by 2028. This growth at a CAGR of 5.9% is underpinned by demand from traditional steel-intensive industries and newer ones like clean energy and infrastructure. Segment-wise, silicomanganese leads the market, accounting for around 42% of demand, followed by ferromanganese and ferrosilicon. The dominance of these categories reflects their essential roles in manufacturing high tensile and corrosion resistant steels. India, while holding under 10% market share, stands on the cusp of rapid expansion thanks to its resource base and maturing metallurgical capabilities. Production of ferroalloys is heavily concentrated, with China at the helm contributing nearly 28.5 million tons annually. However, regulatory constraints and rising energy costs are impacting its export dynamics. India follows with about 2.1 million tons, making it the second largest producer. Its capabilities span multiple alloy types, and its geographic diversity in production lends resilience. Other key players include South Africa and Kazakhstan, well known for ferrochrome, and pre-war Ukraine with niche outputs. As China's dominance recedes, these geographies are gaining importance for buyers seeking political neutrality and cost effectiveness. China, once an unchallenged leader in ferroalloy exports, is experiencing structural shifts. The implementation of stringent energy controls like the 2021 dual control policy has limited high energy industrial activities, particularly in provinces like Inner Mongolia. In tandem, rising electricity tariffs and export constraints under carbon-linked trade regulations have made Chinese alloys less accessible globally. This disruption is creating an opening for emerging suppliers. India, with its blend of metallurgical expertise, cost advantages, and relatively stable policies, is now seen as a credible alternative. Brazil and Vietnam also emerge as significant players in this evolving supply matrix. India's domestic ferroalloy industry is robust, yet underutilized, with an installed capacity of 4.5 million tons per annum. Current output averages between 2.1 and 2.4 million tons, largely influenced by power tariffs and demand variability. Different states dominate specific alloy productions. Odisha, Telangana, and Chhattisgarh are prominent in silicomanganese, Jharkhand and Madhya Pradesh in ferromanganese, and northeastern states in ferrosilicon. This geographic specialization offers flexibility but also reveals systemic dependencies on stable infrastructure and policy support, especially in energy intensive zones. India is carving a distinct mark in global ferroalloy trade. In FY 2023-24, the country exported 1.52 million tons of ferroalloys, generating over US dollars 2.13 billion in export revenue. Notably, India ranks second globally in silicomanganese exports and fifth overall in ferroalloy trade. This is a testament to both product quality and sustained trade linkages with high demand regions. Japan, South Korea, Italy, and the UAE remain key export destinations, markets that value low phosphorus, cost competitive, and increasingly green certified supplies from India. India's domestic demand for ferroalloys is tightly interlinked with its vibrant steel industry, which produces 135 million tons annually. To sustain this, the sector requires about 1.8 million tons of ferroalloys. However, energy costs remain one of the most significant barriers, with power tariffs varying wildly from rupees 3.9 per kilowatt hour in hydropowered Meghalaya to rupees 7 per kilowatt hour in West Bengal. Many plants operate below capacity. Further, while India is nearly sufficient in manganese ore, a significant share is low grade. Critical inputs like ferronickel and vanadium are entirely imported, adding volatility and cost pressure to the supply chain. The global ferroalloy demand map is shifting, and India stands to benefit immensely in Southeast Asia. Countries like Vietnam and the Philippines are investing heavily in rebar and structural steel, driving an 11% year-on-year rise in HC ferromanganese demand. Japan and South Korea are increasingly looking for India for low phosphorus silicomanganese, crucial in their cleaner steel mixes. India currently supplies nearly half of Japan's needs in this segment. Simultaneously, MENA's ongoing infrastructure boom, backed by a US $2 trillion pipeline, and Scandinavia's preference for hydropowered low-emission ferrosilicon offer India strong prospects for diversified premium exports. Green compliance is no longer a niche requirement, it's an export imperative. India has a competitive edge through hydropowered ferrosilicon production, particularly in the northeastern states like Sikkim and Arunachal, which produce with 35% lower carbon dioxide emissions than the global average. European and UK markets are already attaching premiums of up to US $40 per ton for green certified alloys, which represent a clear monetization path for India's low emission output. With early readiness for the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, India can gain exemption from future tariffs, ensuring market continuity and pricing advantage in carbon regulated regions. To truly scale exports, India needs enabling infrastructure and policy incentives. Proposed integrated export zones connecting Raipur to Vizag or Durgapur to Haldia can streamline supply chains and reduce logistics costs significantly. Uniformity in power tariffs, particularly for export-linked units at a subsidized rupees 4.5 per kilowatt hour, would standardize operational costs and help capacity utilization across states. Additionally, a modest rupees 500 to 750 per ton rail freight subsidy would go a long way in improving last mile connectivity from inland plants to coastal ports. These targeted reforms could catalyze India's emergence as a global ferroalloy export hub. Technological modernization is the cornerstone of India's ferroalloy export ambitions. AI and machine learning are now central to smelting operations, optimizing furnace conditions, controlling slag composition, and ensuring impurity thresholds stay within critical limits. Digital traceability through blockchain systems is fast becoming a standard for exports to regulated markets like the EU, US, and Japan. These tools ensure compliance with carbon and ethical sourcing standards. Complementing this is a growing ecosystem of decentralized NABL certified labs that offer frequent and cost-effective carbon auditing, helping exporters participate in carbon markets while building global credibility. Trade diplomacy and market development are critical for cementing India's export growth. Leveraging existing FTAs with the UAE, UK, Australia, and South Korea can eliminate tariff barriers and provide direct access to high demand regions. The Brand India initiative, coordinated with industry bodies like EEPC and FICCI, can reposition Indian ferroalloys as green, certified, and competitively priced alternatives to Chinese products. On the domestic front, MSMEs often struggle with the cost and complexity of export logistics. Promoting cluster-based aggregators for shared access to container terminals, finance, and REACH certification can dramatically improve their participation in global trade. India's ferroalloy sector is at a pivotal juncture. With a foundation built on resource endowment, production scale, and technical capability, the time is ripe for transitioning from a volume-driven exporter to a high-margin, value-added global leader. To achieve this, India must foster an ecosystem where energy costs are rational, logistics are streamlined, and exporters are green certified, and MSMEs are empowered to go global. As ESG compliance becomes a critical differentiator and global supply chains continue to realign, India has the opportunity and the responsibility to step up as the world's strategic source for sustainable ferroalloys. Now I will conclude. Thank you for all your time and attention. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Steel Tech and the organizers of this seminar to provide a platform to share critical insights about India's ferroalloy sector. I hope this session has shed light on the strategic shifts occurring globally and the unique opportunity India holds to lead in both volume and value. Let us continue this conversation beyond this seminar, whether in boardrooms, policy forums, or collaborative research. The journey to global leadership in green metallurgy is not a solo endeavor. It requires a collective effort. Thank you once again.
The last speaker before we break for lunch is Ms. Bipasha Ghosh. She is a graduate in Material Science and Engineering from Wayne State University, Detroit. She joined Tata Steel in 2007. She is currently heading iron ore and manganese ore cells in Tata Steel. She has 17 years of experience in marketing and sales, working in setting up new business and its various aspects of incubation, scale up, and go-to-market strategy. Her work in setting up of new businesses in Tata Steel Services and Solution has been acknowledged in various forums, and like to mention here that Tata Steel Services and Solution business cases has been published in Harvard Business School and their publishing sites. So I invite Ms. Ghosh to present her talk.
Respected Mr. D.B. Sundaramam, Dr. D.B., Mr. Sudhanshu Pathak, eminent dignitaries present over here. Very good afternoon to you. So the topic today that I have is forging the future. Many of us might have seen this or heard the sound of this, but we never realized that we have so much of power of creating the future with us. Moving ahead, there is a disclaimer because there would be many price points and other discussion. So we explicitly disclaim any liability for decisions made or action taken based on the information provided here. And users are strongly advised to conduct their own independent research and due diligence before making any investment or business decisions. So since I'm talking about the future, just to lighten ourselves, let us look at the time that we are talking about before we deep dive into what is happening into your iron industry and steel industry in specific. So today we are talking about a technology by which we can control things around us without any gadget, and that is what we are calling brain controlled interface. Today it is being utilized in assisted mobility or patients who are paralyzed. So without using anything, with this brain controlled interface, they are able to access. So this technology is going to become widespread. So while there are many technologies, I have only selected those which has already in work, and so that we believe ourselves, yes, we are passing through an exciting time. Second thing is of tremendous importance is genetic engineering. So, from the fossils, the lives are being resurrected. And in the last 2 months, the dire wolves, which is an extinct species, that has come to life. There are ethical concerns. So even if I die and there is my DNA present somewhere, so I can be resurrected. So that is where we are heading to. We are talking about traveling into any parts of the world just in an hour. And Hyperloop or supersonic jet, all these are in development and are being tried. We are talking about, and in COVID, post-COVID, we have seen that the first phase of diagnosis can be done by the robot itself. And there are companies in US and in China who are working in these directions. We all know about self-driving car. 3D printing, it has evolved, and going ahead in the later stage, there would be 3D printing for the organs as well. And there is a cafe in Tokyo where we have robots in our daily life serving food. So this is the time that we are talking about. Now, if we have to pull the curtain, that how we are transitioning, and we may not realize that we are at the cusp. So in the iron and steel industry, I'm going to talk about the global scenario, the domestic scenario, and hence what is the future cast. So in global scenario, while China continues to be the big daddy, but it is going to have a degrowth in the near future. But that does not mean that they will not going to utilize the time. So I am going to refer to Dr. DB in many of my presentation, because while I was working in this presentation, I was having an insight that China is now going to work towards making more the steel greener. Okay, they are going to utilize the time. On the other hand, India is going to grab the position of a rising player. Okay, so Moving ahead, this slide also gives us a message that even if you are dependent, while we talk about the privilege of having iron ore, many of the countries who are doing really well in the steel industries like Japan, South Korea, and in fact China also, 70% of China is dependent on import of iron ore. In terms of your iron ore, the need and the production also is growing. And in alignment with the lower requirement of China, there will be lesser production in Australia, China and North America. And there will be increased production in India, South Africa and Ukraine, as we can see from the slide. Moving forward, the trade that we see, most of the iron ore material in terms of almost 60% is being traded, because China is dependent on import and other countries are also dependent on import. While India is self-sufficient, its production is also going to grow, but at the same time import is going to grow, because we don't have availability of high grade and most of the imports are being done by JSW. So while India is still a net exporter and it exports around 33 million tons of iron ore, but the import that is being done of around 5 million ton, almost 90% is imported by JSW. Now what is happening globally? So while I will just touch upon, because many of the speakers have already touched on it, we are moving towards making things greener, and we are moving more towards your EAF route of production, and accordingly we are using the fines and lumps. So your fines percentages in terms of leveraging the raw material is also growing, and that is the cut in terms of your BOF BF route and EAF DRI route, and hence the lumps and the fines percentages that is being used. Coming to the prices, because of the increased availability of the lower steel production, mainly from China, owing to the overcapacity and their real estate market crisis, the price would be under pressure. And as we see, the forecast is it's going down. The globally prices will be going down. On the other hand, in the domestic scenario, most of the players in steel production, they are going to increase their capacities, and the production that has been forecasted to go around by 230 million tons in 2030. In line, while iron ore production is increasing, at the same time it is not enough. Okay, because as we know, the simple thumb rule of 1.6 times of your steel production is the iron ore we require. Accordingly, your need for the import will also go up. However, when we see in Indian steel making, are we going more greener? The answer is no. We are not, because we would be in a developing phase and more of BOF route would be used for your steel production. So it has to be balanced in terms of your other initiatives that has to be taken. More of your, 72% of your CO2 emission is coming from the iron making stage. That is what the slides tells. I'm not getting into the slides. And what needs to be done is, in terms of, enough has been discussed in this one. We have to replace coal with natural gas or hydrogen. And we have to replace coal-based electricity with your renewable-based electricity. And iron ore-based production has to move to a scrap-based production. But this will take time. And there are some transition strategies which have been developed, which we are following in parts and pieces. Similarly, the price outlook, unlike your global, it is going to go up. Almost in the last 5 years, we have seen the fines prices have doubled. Here also, going in the next 5 years, upcoming 5 years, we see that there would be a price increase almost by around 1200 per ton, rupees per ton. So what is the future forecast in summary? So the global market size is going to increase from 1.5 to 2 trillion USD, which is led by the capacity expansion and consumption growth. Asia Pacific will continue to rule, which holds around 60% of your revenue. China is expected to decline. There is a downside risk due to your real estate crisis and your economic headwinds. There will be subdued demand, which will put pressure on your prices. India, there is a positive picture which has been painted. The production, demand, everything is going to increase. However, policy reforms are needed in order to expedite, to ensure the iron ore availability with auction in time and with all clearances in time and other technological interventions in terms of your right kind of exploration is required. So, and for making it sustainable, we need action and demonstration for greener steel balancing growth story, and prices are going to remain buoyant. So when we started, I said that forging of with iron and steel, and it is required to create that infinite possibilities that we create. So with this, I need to thank Steel Tech team for giving this opportunity. Mr. Shishendu Mukherjee, who has been a great mentor, and my team, and Ms. Diya Srivastav, who has worked in this presentation along with me. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Ghosh. Since we are running very late, and I request the distinguished guest, if they have any queries, questions to discuss with the distinguished speakers during lunch break. That way we can save some time so that the next sessions will not be delayed.
Thank you for conducting Professor Das very well. So I request a small token of from Steel Tech. May I request Dr. A.K. Roy, Ashim Roy, to do the honor, please. He is the editorial board member of Steel Tech. Please come. And thereafter, individual photo you may not take. We'll go for a group photo. You take whatever you like, but don't delay for that one. You start from there. Anyway, with the lady. Yeah, along with that also. Yeah. But at pore time group and you know. Yeah, to Tushar. Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. Thank you, Mr. Rao. Yeah. One Dr. Shaban, Dr. Siddharth, okay. Yeah. One to Dr. Thank you, Professor Das, conducting very well, and you also saved some time. Yeah, thank you very much. We are running late. And we'll go for a group photo instead of individual photo. Please come. Stand, Dr. Rai. Please come. Ashun, Dr. Rai. Please come. Please come.